What's up everyone, Howie here at Law Records. Today I'm going to show you the signal chain behind huge hard techno and Schranz leads. This isn't about building the synth patch, it's about what you do with it afterwards. And this is where a lot of people are going wrong and losing size and power. As always, I'll upload this project file to my Patreon. There's a load of presets, samples and project files over there that can help you with your music. With that being said, let's get started. So I've got a few examples here of leads that are processed well and leads that are processed badly. I've called the ones that are processed badly hyped, and I'll explain why later. So one of the problems I hear people having, and I myself struggled with, is finding a great lead for your track. They kind of have the foundations often and then they're looking for a lead. And I'm actually going to show you some reasons why I think they're struggling to find the right sound and fit it in their track. First thing I'll do is just play you some of these leads. Saw wave here. Sort of thing you hear all the time. And then some FM. You may recognize that riff. It's from the Bale 93 remake I made recently. Okay, so these sound kind of full. They're going to fit in the mix. They're simple leads that you hear in a lot of these tracks. In melodic hard techno or Schranz, you'll hear this sort of sound all the time. So we're using Serum today, and all these presets have been rebuilt and tweaked from original presets in Serum. So I'm using Serum because I want to show that there are serious issues. There are problems with the effects chain, with some of the plugins that are used in the synth, and how the whole thing is processed, and it leads to a bad result. I find a lot of people dive into Serum for their presets and sounds to try and find a lead that fits with their track, but they often struggle. And considering how many amazing sort of sound producers there are, it's hard to believe that people are struggling to find good lead sounds. If you have this problem, you'll completely understand how frustrating it is to just be flicking through Serum presets and struggling to find something good. Let's open this Serum preset just as it was before I tried to improve it, and let's have a listen. So that's the detuned square wave you can see here. It's got 5 voices of unison. It's just like a spread out square wave, and it sounds okay. But what I'm going to do first is go into the effects section here and look at how it's being processed. So we've got some distortion, but that's been turned off. We've got a bit of reverb very early on in the chain. And then we've got a compressor that's using the Multiband Compression. And then we've got some delay. We've got some dimension. We've got some EQ. But what I'm going to bring you back to is this. So I see this in so many presets. I see Multiband Compression, and it's almost emulating that OTT preset that you can find in Ableton. So this isn't doing a crazy amount, but you'll hear when I turn it off and on. It's adding a very aggressive compression to the sound, and it's almost changing the tone of the sound. In Ableton, people often use a multiband compressor that looks like this, or maybe even more commonly used, an OTT preset, which is just the multiband with a crazy amount of upwards and downwards compression. The main problem with these plugins is they give you a very hyped sound straight out of the box. It basically sounds brighter, more in your face because it's been compressed to hell, but it actually can often destroy the sound. So I'm just going to go back to the original multiband. Let's have a closer listen to this, and I'll explain some of the things I hear that are actually damaging the sound. So I'll turn it off. I'll turn it on. So it sounds more hyped. It sounds like the mid-range has been scooped out, and maybe the lows and highs are very boosted, particularly the highs. It also sounds very digital. It sounds very harsh. Also, now listen for this grainy texture on the top end. And if you listen carefully, you'll notice the attack also gets completely destroyed. It gets squashed so much, and you're left with this really very fast kind of tick. So you've suddenly got so many changes to the sound with this one plugin, and some of them really aren't very nice to listen to. I can also tell you from experience that just using OTTs and multiband compressors everywhere can create crazy spikes, compression spikes, where you have this really fast peak at the start of the attack, and they'll actually make your sound less full and smooth, harder to master. You'll have to use more limiting on it. You'll have to use more clipping on the sound to get it to fit into a loud mix. So it's also damaging the dynamics. It's damaging the dynamics, it's adding graininess to the sound, it's adding digitalness to the sound, it's kind of removing a lot of that good mid-range, and it just generally sounds bad. It of course does work in some cases. You know, if you have like a massive dubstep bass and you want it really crunchy and hyped, it works on that sort of thing. But generally for techno, for hard techno, for lead sounds, you want something that sounds natural and full and is going to work in a really loud mix. So I would avoid it. So what's the alternative? Now I'm going to show you what I did to process this properly. So before I show you the improved version, I'm just going to play you the hyped one and then the well-processed one so you can have a little listen to the difference. You should be able to notice straight away how much better and how much fuller that sounds. So let's show you what I did to improve this. Into Serum, and what I did was kept the preset the same, nothing changed there, but in the effects, I did a couple of things. So the first thing I actually did was to turn off the reverb and the multiband and the delay. I kept the hyperdimension, I kept the equalizer, and I kept the filter. Because what I decided to do was to do some of these improvements outside of Serum. So the first thing I actually did was EQ. Now all of that OTT is just hyping the highs like a crazy amount, and it's dipping the mid-range. So why not just do that with an EQ? So that's what I did. I'll turn this off. But you'll notice with this, it doesn't destroy the attack. It kind of just accentuates the brightness of the sound and makes it more punchy in the top end, but it doesn't actually destroy the sound. So the next thing I wanted to do was use a saturator to bring up some harmonics, make it sound fuller and fatter, and kind of even out the sound. So I'll turn that off. So what that's doing is just rounding off the transients, making the sound a bit fatter and adding a load of harmonics back in. So now I decided to do the effects after this. And the way you do the effects is very important. So in this effects chain, I've got a dry chain, and then I've got a reverb chain and an echo. And you'll notice I did them in an audio effects rack, and I actually kept them separate. I did this for two reasons. One, for maximum control. I can then EQ and process the effects and even sidechain the effects. And also because they don't interact with each other too much. So the reverb isn't running into the delay, and the delay isn't running into the reverb and creating kind of a big mess. You'll find with a lot of sounds when people put delay and reverb after each other, maybe they'll do 20% dry wet on the reverb, 20% dry wet on the delay, but that just runs one into the other and creates a big stereo mess, and you lose all the definition in the sound. So in this reverb chain, I've just got simple reverb, 2.4 seconds. I've got an EQ, dipping out the lows and sorting out the low mids. And this is all about control and just keeping the mud out of the sound, because these leads are going to give you loads of mud and like messiness in that 400, 500 hertz area. And then I'm actually sidechaining it from itself. So I'm using the well-processed lead 1, and I'm doing the pre-effects. So before it runs into the effects, it's getting sidechained from itself. So when that initial punch of the lead actually hits, there isn't a load of reverb getting in the way. And then when the lead tails off, the reverb comes in. So it creates a little bit of room for the lead to punch through before the reverb comes in. And it definitely gives more definition to the sound. I've done a very similar thing on the delay. So in the echo here, I've just got a stereo delay, an 1/8 and a 1/4. On 100%, 50% feedback. And I'm doing the exact same thing, just sidechaining it from itself. About 5 dB, I'll turn it off. You can just hear that cutting through just a little bit more. So you get this little swell afterwards of the echo and reverb, and it just makes it a lot cleaner. Again, I'm cutting the lows because you don't want a low end in your reverb. Okay, so I'll close that, but there's one more step that I think is really important. And this is actually to clip your sound or to limit your sound. In these tracks, you're going to have your tracks probably at -6, sometimes even -5, -4 LUFS. So that's very loud, and you're going to struggle to get good loud masters without having your leads controlled. So you can use this saturator in digital clip mode to actually clip the sound and keep it below 0. I'll turn it off so you can see it's actually slightly above 0. Here. Then turn it on. Just keeping it under that line. It's basically knocking off maybe a few dB from the sound. It's hard clipping the sound. So that's just knocking off a few dB of peak from the sound, and it's just leveling out the sound, and that'll stop hitting your limiter so hard. So that's essential that you use some sort of limiting, but I recommend trying to clip your lead sounds. Let's continue through these leads and you'll see the pattern. So in this saw wave sound, I'm doing exactly the same thing, turning off the multiband, turning off the delay, turning off the reverb. And we're going to try and get a cleaner and better sound without it. So the first thing I did was to use a transient shaper to get some of that attack in that the multiband is sort of emulating. So I put in some attack and reduced some sustain. This is a really good transient shaper. And then I used some compression as well to add in even more snap into the sound. Without. On. That's really adding so much dynamics and makes the sound much more exciting. I've then got this EQ, and you may think to yourself that's too much EQ, but it actually sounds better than just crushing the sound. To add all this mid-range and highs is actually perfectly fine with EQ8 if you listen. It sounds fine to me. I mean, it's clipping a little bit, but Ableton has quite good headroom, so that's fine. And we did exactly the same thing in here with the effects. So I've got a dry chain, reverb being low passed and side chained from the original lead. The same with the echo. The echo is side chained and then EQ'd away from the original lead, and it just sounds so much cleaner. I'll turn this off. Let's listen to the hyped one. An R1. The hyped one just sounds so squashed, and the reverb and delay is just all squashed into the sound. There's no definition. It's got a load of fizziness at the top, and it just sounds bad. So again, we've sorted that sound. We've done the second sound. Let's move on to the third one. Let's listen to the hyped version of the third one. Have a look here. Kind of a really harsh, not very nice sound without all the processing I'm going to do. So got a bit of chorus, it's got some distortion, some tube, it's got some delay, again, some heavy multiband by the looks of it. Yeah, that's just crazy. It's just completely crushing the sound. Reverb, hyperdimension, and some EQ. So let's have a listen to the one I improved. So you can now hear much more definition and mid-range and presence, and the sound just feels so much fuller. So let's have a look at what we did in Serum. You know what I'm already going to say with the Serum. I just turned off the crazy stuff, the delay, the multiband, and the reverb, and kept everything else the same. I may have turned off the hyperdimension as well. I'll just run through everything in order on this one. This is the sound as it was. Going to add a little bit of compression to add some attack. And then I'm going to use some raw, a little bit like I did with the saturator in the first sound. I'm going to add some harmonics in, make it fuller, and I'm going to use raw to do that. So we've got the soft shaper setting. Off. It's just starting to fill out the sound. I think I did a little bit of tube on the second one. So I've got some even and odd harmonics being added into the sound and making it fuller without destroying the sound. It still sounds like the same sound. And then I've got some pretty drastic EQ, but it does the job. That's bringing up all those frequencies that the multiband would be bringing up, and it's not damaging the sound anywhere near as much. Got the effects again, exactly the same. And then some pretty considerable clipping on this one. The clipping sounds absolutely fine. You're just leveling off the sound. If anything, it's just adding a little bit of white noise to the attack of the sound. That's the sort of distortion that this thing gets. Let's play the hyped version of that one and then the well-processed version of that one. So hopefully you can understand the point I'm trying to make is you don't need to use multiband and OTT on every sound to kind of smash it and make it sound huge. You're probably going to get a much more natural and better result if you work a little bit harder on the sound, doing little tweaks to it to make it sound massive. You can get that hyped sound without multiband compression. That's essentially what I'm trying to get across in this video. Let's go through these sounds in the mix. We'll start with this hyped square. And that's how to process your lead sounds so they sound full, dynamic, and actually sit in your mix. Once again, you can grab this project file plus a ton of presets and samples over on my Patreon. If you want to dive deeper on a topic, you can email me to set up a one-on-one coaching session. The email for that is in the description. Drop your comments and remake requests below. Hype, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.